Developing power is extremely important as a runner, especially if you have a race or some type of event coming up. This is even more important if you are a trail runner, but even if you are a road runner, this still applies. So we're going to go through 5 different power exercises that are going to be beneficial for runners and that are found in my hybrid training programs built specifically for runners and hikers. If you're interested in those programs, you can click the link in the description to learn more about them. Otherwise, if you're new here, hi, I'm Catherine. I'm the personal trainer and running coach at Kathletics. Here at Kathletics, we're all about meeting you where you are in your fitness so you can approach hybrid training in a sustainable way. So the first exercise that we're going to go through are skaters. And skaters are something that are found regardless of your goals. They are found in pretty much all of my programs because having the ability to change directions and feel comfortable and confident doing so is a skill that you need in both everyday life as well as when you're on the trails and even the pavement as well. So for skaters, you're going to start with your feet together. You're going to be hopping laterally to the side and alternate sides. Now you can make this exercise more challenging by adding weight, holding it at your chest, or you could add a layer of depth or a step or something like that that you're going to be hopping onto laterally and then back off again. So it adds that variation of maybe potential terrain that you would expect on a trail. The second exercise that we're going to focus on is a single leg RDL with a knee drag. Now this can be done with or without weight. I do recommend progressing this with weight. So you're going to hinge down into that single leg RDL and then drive the knee up at the top. Now, if you were going to add weight to this, you could add a single dumbbell or kettlebell or even 2 dumbbells. So what that again could look like, planting one foot down, hinging down, and driving the knee up at the top. The third exercise is a split squat position. So you're going to have 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. You're going to bend down into that split squat position. Then you're going to power this knee up into a hike. Hiking the knee up, back down. Hiking the knee up, back down. To make this exercise harder, you could add a little bit of depth with a step or a thick plate. So then that front foot is now elevated and you're in more of a deeper split squat. Coming up, back down. If you've been following along for a while, you know you weren't going to get away with only doing lower body exercises. So we're also going to involve power from your upper body, including your shoulders, as well as your back. So for the first one involving your shoulders, we're going to be doing a push press. So you're going to bring the weights to your shoulders, and then you're going to use a little bit of oomph from your legs to help bring the weight up overhead. Now, once the weight is up over your head, you want your legs to be back straight again. So what that looks like Now you could use kettlebells or a barbell as well if you don't have access to dumbbells. Now the reason we don't neglect the upper body, even though running primarily seems like it would be a leg sport, is that you are using your upper body when it comes to propelling yourself forward, and you have a little bit of that rotation, especially in your arms as you are running. So we want to make sure that we're not neglecting the upper body when it comes to strength training as well as power training, and why we want to make sure that we're still getting all of the upper body and the lower body involved. The next exercise we're going to go through is a pendlay row. So a pendlay row is essentially a bent over row that you are now going to be pulling up from the floor. So in order to do that, you're going to set up the barbell and try to use the weights that are a little bit wider. So if you don't have access to these types of bumper plates, maybe if you have the smaller ones, or if you're using a lighter weight, try to put a little bit of like steps or some sort of padding underneath so you're not quite as far in a hinge, because what we're going to do is get into a deep hinge. So your back is pretty much going to be parallel to the ground. Now, as you can see, this is pretty lined up with where my hands grab. Now, if you had a smaller weight or a smaller plate and you're closer then to the ground, you're probably going to be more like here, and we don't really want to do that because as you can see, once you get to a certain spot, you might feel a little bit more bend in your back, and we don't want to be bending at the back, we want to be bending at the hips. So again, add a little bit of padding underneath there so you don't have to deal with that as well. So for the pendlay row, we're going to get into a deep hinge again, so back stays nice and flat. We're going to be pretty much parallel to the ground. We're going to grab at the bar. You're going to be powerfully pulling up and letting the weight come back down to the ground. So it's okay if the weight kind of makes some noise for this exercise. So overall, when you are training in a power focus, that means that the speed is going to be quicker. So that's why it's really important to build your strength and maybe even hypertrophy ahead of doing a power phase, because basically you are taking what you built during that strength phase and now we're moving it at a quicker speed with control. So this is why it's so important to follow a program that's going to have these training cycles that allows you to go through the phases of endurance, hypertrophy, strength, and then power, because each of these phases leads into the other for a specific reason. So again, once you've built the endurance, so you are more comfortable with the exercises, you get into hypertrophy, you're really focusing on building muscle, thinking of a little bit more about tempo, and then you're shifting into that strength phase where we're pushing the weights a little bit more, focusing maybe a little bit less on high reps and more on lower reps so we can push the weight and feel really strong in that, and then shifting that into power so we can move those heavier weights with speed and control. This is exactly the method that we go through in my hybrid training program. So if that's something you're curious about, click the link in the description below. If you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. Otherwise, be sure to like, subscribe, and then we'll see you in the next one.